Some of you might disagree, but calculating missing numbers is one of my favorite types of questions. A lot of times, you are presented with the 3x3 matrix, typically a square, which has small squares inside. In our case, we have numbers in different colors presented in the smaller squares inside the larger square. The numbers are 521, 233, 4 and 4. And then one number is missing, and this is the one that you need to calculate. Once you complete the calculation, you need to select one of the 4 different choices. Choice A, 0, choice B, 1, choice C, 2, and choice D, 3. Take a look closely and see if you can identify the missing number. Give yourself 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 10 to 15 seconds, to see if you can come up with the right solution. Do you see the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge and get to the correct solution together. As usual, my advice to you, always look for patterns. In this particular case, we need to look at the patterns inside the rows and then inside the columns. Let's look at the first 2 rows to see if we can get a pattern. The sum of 5 plus 2 plus 1 equals to 8. The sum of 2 plus 3 plus 3 also equals to 8. So there might be a pattern. Let's look if there is a pattern for the columns that have full sets of numbers. 5 plus 2 plus 4 equals 11. 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 9. So there is no pattern. In this case, we can relatively simply use the pattern from the rows. This would allow us to calculate the 3rd row. If we know that the sum should be 8, we can assume that the 4 plus question mark, which would be representing the missing number, would be equal to 8. So the missing number would be equal to 0. The correct choice here is choice A, 0. Hopefully you've nailed this question on your own and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. I'm excited to share with you a cool question, which is easy to understand, but which doesn't have an obvious answer. You're presented with the 2x3 matrix. This matrix has arrows inside. There are 2 types of arrows, solid arrows, and then there are arrows that consist of 3 different shapes. There are 6 possible spaces in the 2x3 matrix. 5 shapes are present, and 1 shape is missing. You're presented with 4 different choices to identify the missing shape, which is highlighted by the question mark. You have choices A, B, C, and D. Give yourself 10 to 15 seconds to see if you can identify the right answer. Did you figure out the correct answer? Let's continue to see if we can get to the correct solution together. To solve these types of challenges, you always need to look for patterns. And there are 3 different patterns present in this sequence. Let's look at the pattern 1. If we start from the upper left corner and go clockwise, you see that the arrows change alternatively in each subsequent box. Second pattern is that inside the box, solid arrows rotate clockwise. And then the 3rd pattern, which is a little harder to identify, is that the previous arrow points to the next arrow's start. This is why the missing part, the part that you would need to identify, contains an arrow placed in the right corner pointing to the left. So the correct answer here is choice B. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems in the test. But in case you need more problems and solutions, please make sure to check out my ebook in the description section of this video. I had this question being asked as part of consulting job interview. How many seconds are there in a year? Take a look at the picture. It might give you a hint. Do you think you know the answer? Think of the logic. How would you calculate how many seconds are there in a year? Or maybe there is an alternative. Always try to think out of the box. This would be my hint to you. And give yourself 10 to 15 seconds. This is as much time as you might get answering these types of questions in the test. Now let's continue and get to the correct solution together. Obviously, this is a tricky question, and it challenges you in understanding of the word second. There are 2 meanings in the word second. One is second, for example, 1 minute has 60 seconds. But second one is second, where you have sequence of first and second. And the second meaning of the second is used in this particular question. So if we go back to the question, in the year there are 12 months, and there are 12 second days. one second day in each month. January 2nd, February 2nd, March 2nd, and etc. Hopefully you've nailed this question. It gives you some laugh, and you now know how to answer similar problems on the test. The types of questions you're looking at is very frequently used on a test. Typically, you're being asked to determine the item which does not belong to the group, and you're presented with multiple items. In our choice, we have choices A, B, C, and D. Each item is represented as a square which contains multiple different items inside, and you need to determine the item which does not belong to this particular pattern or sequence. Do you see the answer? Please take a look to see if you can come up with the solution. Give yourself 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 10 to 20 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer. Did you figure it out? Let's continue to see how we can go and get to the correct solution together. As you might have figured out by now, there's always a pattern that you need to detect to answer these types of questions correctly. And a lot of times, there are items that are designed to confuse you. So let me first walk you through the items that are designed to confuse you. You have small circles, and there are 4 small circles in each of the square. And the small circles do not have any patterns. We also have triangles. Some squares have 2 triangles, and some squares only have 1. But there is no pattern here. The pattern is actually defined by the half circle. And as you can see, all half circles are attached to the corners of the square. You see this in the shapes A, B, and C. But in shape D, half circle is placed in a different location. It is in the bottom middle of the square. This is why the item that doesn't belong to the group is the choice D. So the correct answer here is choice D. Let's recap. The pattern here is that all half circles are attached to the corners of the square. But half circle in the shape D is placed in a different place than the others. The half circle there is in the lower part of the square. This is why the correct answer here is choice D. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Very frequently on the test, you might be asked to detect the pattern. In this question, we're being asked which item comes next in the sequence, and we're presented with the sequence of items. 6 items in the sequence are visible: 0, 2, 6, 12, 20, and 30. And the next item is missing. And you're being asked to select one of the 4 following choices. Choice A, 42. Choice B, 44. Choice C, 46. And choice D, 48. Do you see the answer? It may or may not be obvious, depending upon your skills of detecting the pattern. Like it or not, we're gonna continue and I'll share with you the answer. As with any type of question, the key is to determine the pattern. To determine the answer in this particular case, you need to increment previous number by the greater even digit in the sequence. You can even come up with the formula. And in our case, the formula to determine the next number would be current number plus 2 multiplied by current position. Let's see how it works. For example, let's take the number 0. This is the first number in the sequence. To determine the next number in the sequence, we need to add previous number, which is 0, and then 2 multiplied by 1, because number 0 has the first position in the sequence. Instead of using the formula, you can also use the next even number and add it to the previous number. The even numbers are 2, 4, 6, and you can increment them down the list. So you can add 2 to 0, the next one would be 4, 2 plus 4 equals 6. The next number would be 6, 6 plus 6 is 12. The next number would be 8, and 12 plus 8 equals 20. The number after that would be 10, so 20 plus 10 would be 30. And the number after that would be 12, and 30 plus 12 equals 42. The correct choice here is choice A, 42. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. You're going to love this problem because it is so confusing. You're presented with multiple set of calculations. In our case, we have two full calculations, and one calculation is missing the final value. The first calculation is 22 multiplied by 22 equals 16. Second calculation is 33 multiplied by 33 equals 36. And then the last calculation is 44 multiplied by 44 equals question mark. And you need to calculate question mark. You have four different choices. Choice A, 52. Choice B, 56. Choice C, 60. And choice D, 64. Do you see the answer? It's not obvious, so give yourself 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 10 to 20 seconds, to see if you can come up with the solution. Ready or not, I'm going to reveal the answer, and we're going to get to the correct solution together. Typically, to solve these types of problems, you need to identify the pattern. And in this particular case, the pattern is that the sign and parentheses are hidden in between digits and are not presented on the screen. Let's look at the first two examples. 22 multiplied by 22 equals 16. It is not obvious because it doesn't go along with the rules of conventional math. But if you add parentheses and in parentheses add 2 plus 2, multiplied another set in parentheses 2 plus 2, you will be multiplying 4 by 4 and the result would be equal 16. Same thing with 3 by 3. If you add in parentheses 3 plus 3, multiplied by another set in parentheses 3 plus 3, you will be multiplying 6 plus 6 and the result will be 36. So the correct answer here is the set in parentheses 4 plus 4 multiplied by another set in parentheses 4 plus 4, which would be multiplication of 8 by 8, and the end result of this would be 64. So the correct answer here is choice D, 64. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Here's one of my favorite questions, and it is my favorite because it is so unusual. You are presented with the pyramid. Pyramid contains 5 different layers. If we go from the top to bottom, you have a question mark. This is the number that you need to uncover. The next layer contains numbers 24 and 28. Layer below this contains numbers 10, 12, and 14. Next layer has 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the last layer has numbers 3, 1, 4, 2, and 5. You're presented with 4 different choices for the missing number. Choice A, 55. Choice B, 56. Choice C, 57. And choice D, 60. Do you see the answer? You will be surprised how simple it is to get to the answer when we go to the next step. Give yourself 5, 10, maybe 15 seconds to see if you can calculate and get to the correct answer. Did you figure it out? Let's continue and see how we can get to the correct solution together. Well, here, to be honest, I tried to trick you. I went in describing numbers from top to bottom, but in reality, you should be looking at the numbers from bottom to the top. If we start from the bottom row, for example with numbers 3 and 1, you see that the sum of 3 and 1 will add up to 4. But then it gets trickier. If we go from the second row to the third row, you see that the 4 and 5 does not necessarily add up in 10. 4 and 5 adds up in 9, and then you need to increment it by 1. If you go to the next layer, you need to increment it by 2. And then in the final row, you need to increment it by 3. So the correct answer here is choice 55. Let's recap. Starting with the bottom row, the sum of 2 squares results in the number in the next row. For example, 2 plus 5 equals 7. However, as each level continues, the sum increases by 1. For example, 4 plus 5, we need to increment and add 1 to get to 10. So the answer is calculated by adding up 24 plus 28 plus 3, which would be equal to 52 plus 3 and would be equal to 55. The correct answer here is choice A, 55. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Here's another puzzling question you might find difficult to solve. You're presented with 4 triangles. Each triangle has a number in the corner. and you need to calculate one of the missing numbers in the upper corner of the black triangle. You have 4 different choices. You have choice A, 1, you have choice B, 2, you have choice C, 3, and you have choice D, 4. Can you determine the answer? Let's continue to see how we can solve this challenge together. Determining the pattern is the key to solving this challenge. For example, if you add up the numbers in the lower left corners, 6 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 in all triangles, you will get to the sum of 10. Same thing happens when you add up the numbers in the bottom right corners of the same triangles. 2 plus 3 plus 0 plus 5 also equals 10. So same logic can be applied to the upper right corners of the triangles. As you can see, triangles are colored to confuse you. So you're only concentrated on the numbers inside of each triangles, but you're not looking across multiple triangles. The correct answer to this problem is choice A, 1, because this is the math of getting into 10 with the missing number. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. A lot of times you might be presented with the question on the test that will try to determine your knowledge of English words, as well as how quickly you can extract these words from your memory. In this particular case, we are looking at 4 letters: Q, A, and U, and you need to guess the word by combining these letters. Do you see the word? Give yourself 5 to 10 seconds to see if you can come up with the answer. Let's continue to see how we can get the correct answer together. As you might have figured out, the correct answer here is word aqua. The spelling of the final word is A-Q-U-A, and you can get to the correct answer by rearranging the letters on the screen. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. A lot of times you might get a question which asks you to determine the sales increase. You're typically presented with the graph, which shows lines that represent different sales. In our case, we are represented with the chart that shows sales of cardio equipment from January to June, sales of bikes represented by the blue line, sales of elliptical represented by the orange line, and sales of treadmills are represented by the gray line. The question asks you to determine largest sales increase. Specifically, you need to determine which period represents the largest 1 month's number of item sales increase for cardio equipment sales. You have 4 different choices. Choice A, bikes from January to February. Choice B, bikes from February to March. Choice C, ellipticals, March to April. And choice D, treadmill, May to June. Do you see the answer? You may need to look closely to determine the correct answer for this question. Give yourself 5 to 10 seconds to see if you can come up with the right solution. Are you ready? We're going to move forward and cover the answer for this problem and get to the solution together. To answer this question, we need to look at the graph closely. For each data point on the graph, we need to determine the actual value. And once we have all the numbers, we need to answer the question by looking at the differences for equipment sales from months to months. Specifically, in this case, you need to evaluate 4 different choices that are represented by answers A through D. Let's do it together. Based on the chart, bike sales increased by 2 from January to February, and the increase was from 5 to 7 items sold. Bike sales also increased by 2 from 7 to 9 between February and March. Elliptical sales, on the other hand, increased by 7 from March to April, jumping from 2 to 9. And treadmill sales increased by 4 between May and June, going up from 2 to 6. So the correct answer here is choice C, elliptical sales from March to April, because jump was by 7 from 2 to 9. Hopefully you've nailed this question and now know how to answer similar problems on the test. Thanks for watching. If you liked the content, please give us a like and consider subscribing. Thank you for your endorsement, support, and patronage. Please also check out additional resources in the description section of this video. I also encourage you to check resources page on our website, howtoanalyzedata.net. Please leave your feedback, corrections, or suggestions in the comment section of this video. And all the best on your journey. I'll see you in my next video.